Reflections on the Good News of Jesus Christ for the 33rd Sunday of Ordinary Time from the Gospel according to Luke. While some people were speaking about how the temple was adorned with costly stones and votive offerings, Jesus said, "All that you see here, the days will come when there will not be left a stone upon another stone that will not be thrown down." Then they asked him, "Teacher, when will this happen? And what sign will there be when all these things are about to happen?" He answered, "See that you not be deceived, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am he,' and 'the time has come.' Do not follow them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified, for such things must happen first, but it will not immediately be the end." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be powerful earthquakes, famines, and plagues from place to place, and awesome sights and mighty signs will come from the sky. Before all this happens, however, they will seize and persecute you. They will hand you over to the synagogues and to prisons, and they will have you led before kings and governors because of my name. It will lead to your giving testimony. Remember, you are not to prepare your defense beforehand, for I myself shall give you a wisdom in speaking that all your adversaries will be powerless to resist or refute. You will even be handed over by parents, brothers, relatives, and friends, and they will put some of you to death. You will be hated by all because of my name, but not a hair on your head will be destroyed. By your perseverance, you will secure your lives." The Gospel of the Lord. The signs of the times are not good. Disaster is not far off. Such is the tone of the stories coming out of the United Nations Climate Conference taking place currently in Brazil. Experts from many of the world's countries are trying desperately to alert all of us to the unimaginable, even apocalyptic, worldwide consequences if we fail to address global warming seriously and soon. Apocalyptic. Now there's an interesting word. Have you ever noticed that from time to time, a word that was once rarely heard becomes frequently heard and used? Apocalyptic is such a word, often used to describe imminent disaster, perhaps forecasting the end of the world. Given the multiple crises and catastrophes of our time, global warming, yes, but also numerous wars and civil unrest, the mistreatment and deportation of immigrants, shortages of food, energy, housing, natural disasters beyond counting. Given all of that, it may be understandable that some people see our time as apocalyptic. But then, has there ever been an age that has not predicted an imminent apocalypse? What century has not seen wars? What nation has not tried to bulldoze its way ahead of others, if not for victory in military struggle or economic supremacy, then for more seemingly respectable signs of gain? When have we not been plagued by cancerous life, or tossed by mighty movements of earth and sea? Apparently, it has always been so. These gospel stories given to us as we draw toward the end of the church year all contain apocalyptic elements. The people Jesus faced were concerned about all kinds of diseases, disasters, current and likely to come. And the followers of Jesus had to face all kinds of violent and often murderous persecution. if they were to remain followers of Jesus. Well, at least we don't have to face that in our time. True, but today, persecutions can still happen, just in different forms, from ridicule to total indifference. One's convictions can stand in the way of promotion. Strong beliefs can be dismissed as quaint or outmoded. Families may divide over religious belief. Politics has become an all too familiar reason for justifying exclusion, cruelty, and the worst kinds of violence. We may suffer from upholding honesty in business when cutting corners has become the norm. We may suffer from holding the line in our children's formation when the environment has become more permissive. We may oppose the death penalty or abortion or the easy availability of guns, or stand up against discrimination or harassment because of gender identity or immigration status. To take a stand on principle today is to invite opposition, perhaps even worse. And how ought we to respond? Today, Jesus answers that by telling us to stand firm. By your perseverance, he says, you will secure your lives. It was common in ancient times, but not unheard of today, to blame God, or the gods, depending on one's beliefs, for anything that happened, especially anything bad. God must be really angry with me or us because of something I did or didn't do, and the result is punishment of one kind or another. It's a common mistake, perhaps best expressed this way. God made men and women in God's image and likeness, and we have been doing the same to God ever since. Whenever Scripture speaks about God as being offended, as getting angry, as wanting to wreak vengeance on God's enemies, or as demanding that we kill somebody in God's name, it is speaking anthropomorphically. That is, it is taking our own thoughts, feelings, and reactions and projecting them onto God. We get angry, God does not. Our hearts crave vengeance, God's heart does not. We demand that murderers be executed, God does not. Scripture contains numerous anthropomorphisms that make for a bad and dangerous theology if read and understood literally. And if you want proof, get to know the God revealed to us in Jesus, God's Son. Because Jesus does none of those things. In fact, he turns that whole way of thinking on its head by sacrificing his life for us. And so, if our thoughts tend to go in that vengeful, hateful direction, perhaps it's time, as St. Paul says, to put on the mind of Christ. Today's gospel passage takes place at the temple in Jerusalem, a place that must have been very familiar to Jesus. His parents brought him there as an infant when he was presented to the two prophets, Simeon and Anna, who recognized him as the one whom God had promised to send. His parents lost him there when he was 12, and then found him having a question and answer session with the teachers. He cured several people and taught many others in his visits to the temple during his years of ministry. He threw the money changers and animal sellers out of the temple, as we heard again just last Sunday, which certainly did not improve his popularity with the temple officials. For the Jewish people, the destruction of the temple, which they considered to be the place where God dwelled, would be tantamount to the end of the world, a signal of the apocalypse. But years before it was destroyed by the Romans, something even more significant happened, something that is mentioned but perhaps goes unnoticed whenever we hear the Passion narrative from the Gospel of Matthew. At the moment of Jesus' death, the veil of the temple, the inner curtain which guarded the most sacred place in the temple, which only the high priest could enter, was torn in two from top to bottom. The word for temple in Latin is fanum. Everything outside the temple is called the profanum, in English, profane. The world was neatly divided between the sacred and the profane. But with the death of Jesus, there was no longer any such division. The veil was torn. The whole world is made sacred. The Spirit of Jesus would be set free throughout the world and indeed all of creation, which is the true home of God. The Feast of Pentecost celebrates that event. Temples, churches, mosques, and the like are still important, but don't ever think those are the only places where God dwells. In fact, as St. Paul writes, we are the temple of God in the world. Each of us is a living temple. The Spirit of God dwells in us. But what to do when the sky over your world is falling? When the signs in your world are threatening doom and gloom? When there seems to be little reason to say yes to anything or anyone, including God? At times like that, it might be very helpful to remember the lessons these apocalyptic gospel stories are trying to teach us. That the time we are given in this life is precious and gone all too soon. That God gives us this gift of life to embrace and be embraced by the love that is God. Jesus calls us not to be obsessed with the stones of our lives that will one day collapse and become dust, but instead to seek and find and make our own the lasting things, the things of God, love that never ends, compassion that never fades, forgiveness that never falters. Jesus is telling us that the only way to be prepared for whatever comes is to live a good life now, a life that is based on following his example. Thanks very much for listening. Please feel free to share these reflections with others if you so choose. And you're always welcome to subscribe and receive these reflections each weekend, which you can do at our website, www.justanother.disciple.com. Once again, www.justanother.disciple.com. Thanks again.